Okay, here we go. And send out a notification. Let's give you 1 second. Send out a notification. Whoops. Okay, and check to see if we're online and we're ready to go. I think. Yes. Okay. We're ready. By Krishna's grace, got all the technical bugs worked out. And we will start. Hold on a second. We will start. There we go. Hold on a second. All right. Nice to see everybody. And let's go. So today, actually a special day in the Vaishnav calendar, we are celebrating Narottama Das Thakur's appearance. So we're going to be speaking about Narottama Das Thakur today, if that's all right with all of you. And even if it's not all right, we're still going to do it. How could it not be all right to commemorate Narottama Das Thakur's appearance? So we're going to chant, "Oh Hey Vaishnava Thakur," because it's his appearance, not disappearance day. And let's go. Oh Hey Vaishnava Thakur, Asadare Sekuru Nakori, Para Jaya Shogahe Maya Tumara Shuranadori, Jaya Begatam Dusha Shodi Jaya Guna Deo Satsanga Dehawe Amare. Whoops, setting here. Bochachi Shangira say Ekaki Amara Boy Harinama Sankirtane, to be Kripakori Shada Vindutiya Deho Krishna Namadane, Krishna said no Mara Amito Gangala Krishna Krishna Boli Dayatava Vaje Vaje Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Uribo, Bo, Uribo, Bo, Jaco, Haribo, 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 Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahansa Paravatikacharya, Ostotera Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai, Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopikapanath Sayam Kun Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Machuranam Ki Jai, Jagadata Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Srimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Samveda Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda, Hari Hari Go. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda, Hari Hari Bol. Okay, so Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharade Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deja Tarane. Whoops, let's get rid of that window. So, today, as we mentioned before, is the glorious appearance day of Srila Narottama Das Thakur. Narottama Das Thakur Ki Jai. So we're going to be speaking a little bit about Narottama Das Thakur today, if that's all right with all of you. Hopefully it's all right. And if it's not all right, what can I do about it? So it's actually important on these particular days to glorify these great personalities like Narottama Das Thakur, of course Narottama Das Thakur, Shaimananda, and also Srinivasacharya, our second generation descendants of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, disciplic descendants, of course. That's important to understand. So what I am going to do is talk about Narottama Das Thakur, but first, Om Gana Timidandasha, Garanjana Shlakaya, Chakshur Urmiritam, Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. So in order to discuss Narottama Das Thakur's pastimes, we have to start with someone named Lokanath Goswami, who was Narottama Das Thakur's spiritual master. Anyway, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master's divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So kindly open my eyes with a torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So let's start with Lokanath Goswami, who is the spiritual master of Narottama Das Thakur, but he wasn't before. He was in Mayapur with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he was very attached, very, very attached to Lord Chaitanya. And being attached to Lord Chaitanya, he didn't really want to see Lord Chaitanya taking sannyas. Many devotees, they actually weren't so happy with Lord Chaitanya taking sannyas because Lord Chaitanya, when he took sannyas, he became very renounced from this world. Excuse me. He became very renounced from this world, and they didn't like to see that. Generally, devotees like to see the Lord served in opulence, or at least in comfort. Let's say comfort rather than opulence. So Lokanath Goswami was sent by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Vrindavan, and actually also to prepare the ground for the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan who would later come. Of course, Lokanath Goswami's intimate friend was Bhugarba Goswami, and they were inseparable. So, even when he was in Vrindavan, he wanted to see Lord Chaitanya, so he heard that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Prayag, and then he went to when he went to actually first let me try to remember the whole story. No, he heard Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in South India, so he went to South India to try to see Lord Chaitanya, but Lord Chaitanya got to Vrindavan then. And then when he went back to Vrindavan, he heard the Lord Chaitanya was in Prayag. And then he thought, let me go to Prayag to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because it was in Prayag that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave instructions to Srila Rupa Goswami, which we read about previously in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So then he had a dream, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared to him and said, no, just stay in Vrindavan. We have some very serious business for you. So he just stayed in Vrindavan for the rest of his mortal sojourn. That means his particular pastimes within that, I hate to use the word lifetime, but anyway, yeah, I think you understand what I mean. Within that particular pastime of the Lord. Okay. So, let's get back to Narottama Das Thakur. So, way before Narottama Das Thakur appeared, Lord Chaitanya visited this place called Keturi, which is where Narottam was going to be born. And there was a river that surrounded Keturi Dham, and this was called the Padma River. It's actually in East Bengal or Bangladesh right now. It says the Padma River. And when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went and bathed in the Padma River, which is the holy river, he was crying out, Narottam, Narottam, Narottam. And not only that, he deposited his love of God, some sort of potency of love of God in the Padma River. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained all this to Lord Nityananda. He said, soon there will be a great personality known as Narottama, so the greatest personality, Uttama, that's superlative, the topmost personality, who will appear in Gatorade. So shortly after that, or a long time after that, actually it was shortly after that, Narottama Das Thakur, of course he wasn't Das Thakur at that time, he was simply Narottam, took birth in Keturi, and he got the name Narottam because the astrologer predicted he would be the topmost or best of persons, or men, like that. And he showed many signs of a great personality. Even when it came time for his grain ceremony, he refused to take any grains or rice or anything like that unless it was offered to the deities. He was the son of a very rich king, landholder king like that. His name was Raj Krishnananda. That's quite a nice name, Krishnananda, and his mother's name was Narayani. So when he was 12 years old, he had this dream, and in that dream, Lord Nityananda appeared to him and told him go to the Padma River. So he went to the Padma River, took his bath, and came back. His complexion had changed completely. It was golden at that point, and he was simply ecstatic, rolling on the ground because he had taken the prema, or the love, that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had deposited in the Padma River. But one problem with becoming a great lover of God, and it's a big problem, is that one becomes apathetic to material life. Now, what does apathetic mean? Unless you use the word pathos, or we're not going to use the word pathetic because that's used in a different way in English. Pathetic means just, the guy's so stupid he's pathetic, or so crazy he's pathetic. But apathetic, in this particular case, because pathos means like an emotion, so apathetic means without any emotion, he became nirapeksha to material life. In other words, his parents want to get him angry. This is very, very, get him married, not angry, sorry. Uh, this is very similar to the story of Raghunath Das Goswami, who was very apathetic to material life. And Narottama Das Thakur's parents acted in a very similar way to the parents of Raghunath Das Goswami. They had guards to make sure that he didn't escape. Phew. And the guards made him feel like he was in prison. His parents were in such anxiety. Our son just wants to join the Hare Krishna movement. And you find that even today, the parents don't want it. At least, not all parents, but most parents don't want it. Because, the son is supposed to do something for them, and the daughter is supposed to do something. What does the son or daughter do? It fulfills their desires, takes care of them when they get old, which is actually a pretty good idea, but fulfills their desires for little grandchildren, so they can cuddle the little grandchildren. And anyway, I'm a sannyasi. I'm not going to get into this. I'll get in trouble. So anyway, so it fulfills their desires. What are we going to do later on in life? We're going to take care of the little grandbabies and the great grandbabies. So the parents were in anxiety, and also they had no one to take over their money if inheritance if Narottam didn't do it. Same time, Narottam was also hearing from a great personality named Krishnadas about the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda. And he also heard about someone who would later on become his associate named Srinivas Acharya. So he was just feeling this great, intense emotion. And who can understand the emotions of a Vaishnava? I'm going to be speaking about that in class tomorrow, the emotions, deep, deep emotions. I mean, it's hard for us to understand that, what the emotions are like. Anyway, so we're going to do a brief exposition about that tomorrow. So tomorrow morning's Bhagavatam class, or tomorrow late at night for those of you in Australia and New Zealand. So then Narottama Das Thakur had a dream. And in that dream, Lord Chaitanya said, you are going to be initiated by Lokanath Goswami. So then he planned and planned and planned, and he escaped from home. And he ran to Vrindavan, or walked to Vrindavan, as the case may be. But by the time he got to Vrindavan, Rupa and Sanatan had passed away. So he felt desolate, depressed, and anxiety. Of course, all these are spiritual emotions. But he also dreamed, or that he was going to meet his great associate, Srinivasacharya. And Srinivasacharya also had a dream that Narottama Das Thakur would come in the next day. So Narottama Das Thakur arrived in Vrindavan, and he met the remaining Goswamis in Vrindavan, amongst whom was Lokanath Goswami, who was going to become his guru, and also Jiva Goswami, who was Narottama Das Thakur's Siksha Guru. And he trained up Narottama Das Thakur, Srinivasa Acharya, and Shyamananda, and other Vaishnavas, of course, in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness and the practice of Krishna consciousness and poetry and so many other things. So, but he was told, remember, by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he was going to take initiation from Lokanath Goswami. But Lokanath Goswami had taken a vow, being a humble Vaishnava, not to give initiation to anybody, or not to accept any disciples. He thought, I'm not qualified. This is the mood sometimes of a great, great devotee. So why, the question arises, why would anyone think that they're qualified? Why would anyone think they're qualified? That's an interesting point. And because if someone thinks they're qualified, they are unqualified. So one takes disciples not because they think that they're qualified, but because they're ordered to do so by their spiritual master. Amaragai Guru Hoy Tore Desh. As Lord Chaitanya says, Yari Dekatarikar, Krishna Padesh Amaragai Guru Hoy Tore Desh is my instruction. And Prabhupada wanted it. So if one has the order of the spiritual master, even if one feels himself or herself completely unqualified, one has to take up the service. I mean, so many of us are unqualified in many different ways, but because Prabhupada wanted it, Prabhupada deputized us. So we take up service for what's mentioned. So this is the point, not that one is thinking, I'm a qualified guru. Wow, really nice guru. I should even worship myself. So many things happen if you're a guru that sometimes even people show your baby pictures and think it's sweet. And we were talking about this the other day. Some of the devotees came across my baby pictures and they were thinking, oh, how cute. And I said, what happened to that person's not exist? That body's not existing anymore. It's just not existing. It's an illusion. It's all an illusion. How cute or not cute or, it's all gone. The past. We don't live in the past. So anyway, getting back to the point. So Lokanath Goswami had taken a vow never to accept any disciples. And so Narottama Das Thakur, he was determined, and he secretly was cleaning Lokanath Goswami's latrine every day. And he went on doing this for about a year. And Lokanath Goswami was wondering, who was cleaning the latrine area? Latrine basically means an outhouse at this particular point, or basically sometimes just a hole in the ground. Very simple life. The Goswamis lived. There was no toilets there at that particular point, or indoor showers, or anything like that. It was a very austere life. But still, India is quite a civilized country. I mean, I was just doing some research into the history, European history versus Indian history, and Europe is so much more uncivilized. Unbelievable. The wars, the atrocities. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. India had some atrocities, but those are mainly from the invaders. People who came from the West. Of course, not so many Europeans, but actually the Europeans took over through business means. But anyway, so the Mughals, like that, hundreds of millions of Hindus killed, ruthlessly slaughtered by the Mughals. It's actually, I think it's the world's most horrible genocide, and very few people talk about it because it's not politically correct to talk about it, but it's a fact. It happened. So anyway, he cleansed the latrine of Lokanath Goswami, and Lokanath Goswami had a dream by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he initiated Narottama Das Thakur as his only disciple, and Narottama Das Thakur was trained by Shilaji Goswami, his Siksha Guru. So after he received his training, he and Srinivasacharya and Shaimananda received their training. They decided to take the books of the Goswamis, or at least copies of the books of the Goswamis, to Bengal. And these books were hand copied at that particular juncture. And so they basically went to Bengal. But on the way to Bengal, and I think everybody knows the story, or in Bengal, there was one kingdom called Vana Vishnupura. And the king there, he was a dacoit. Hum Vira. Actually, like my name is Vira. Vira Hum Vira. So was his name. And he had a whole bunch of dacoits and dacoit astrologers, and they told him that these people were coming from the west, that is, from Vrindavan, are carrying a treasure in a treasure chest. And so they stole what they thought was a treasure. And actually later on, Srinivasacharya met the king, was able to convince the king of his superiority, was given the books again, and the king became a great devotee and gave up his dacoitery and made Vana Vishnupura a Vaishnava kingdom. Everyone had to chant their rounds: no eating meat, fish, or eggs, or intoxication, or illicit sex, or gambling in the whole kingdom. But that's another story. So that's what happened with the books. And when the books were stolen, these three personalities, Srinivasacharya, he went looking for the books, but Narottama Das Thakur, he visited Navadvip at that time, and Shaimananda, he went to Orissa to preach in Orissa. So he visited Navadvip, and in a vision, he saw Navadvip as it was when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was there, because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu obviously had left this world by this particular time. But Lord Chaitanya's widow was there, and also Janava and Vasudha, the widows of Lord Nityananda, were in Ekachakra. So he visited Ekachakra, and it turns out that Lord Nityananda personally took him around Ekachakra and guided him to all the holy places in Ekachakra. But Lord Nityananda was hidden in the form of a Brahmin. So then he eventually went back to Keturi. And in his dream, he had a dream, he dreamt that there were deities in what's called a go down. Go down doesn't mean go down. Go down means like, let's see, in Spanish called almacén, warehouse in English. So, go down, Mister. Anyway, so they were the books. No, he had a dream there were deities in a go down, and this go down or warehouse had a lot of rice in it, but nobody could go near the go down because also, in addition to the rice, there were these venomous snakes. We understand the snakes were actually expansions of Anantashesh. But in any case, they were the snakes, so nobody could go there. And this go down was owned by a rich person. And so Narottama Das Thakur went to this rich person and said, "Can I go in your go down?" And the rich person said, You have my permission, but please don't, because you're going to get bitten and you may die." So, of course, having faith in Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, Narottama Das Thakur went into the go down, and the snakes just, I wouldn't say they ran away, because you never see snakes running, but they slithered away. And because these snakes were there to protect the deities, and inside he found 6 deities. 6 deities, and he had this big festival that he organized. And this festival was the festival of Gaur Purnima. And the chief guest at the festival, the chief Brahmin, was, guess what? Janava Mata, who was Lord Nityananda's wife. Of course, Lord Nityananda had already left this world, but Janaba Mata was still there. And so she was the chief guest, and she sometimes cooked, did some deity worship. She did deity worship, for those of you who are chauvinistic. And she was a guru. She initiated disciples. She traveled with a whole bunch of people, some of whom were her disciples, some of whom were other great Vaishnavas or Vaishnavis. Uh, and she traveled with her son. So anyway, so it's protected by her son. So anyway, so what happened is that let's see, during this festival, many things happened. One thing that happened during the festival was that Narottama Das Thakur had this ecstatic Leela Kirtan about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates, because Narottama Das Thakur had a special style of kirtans, which was like a Leela, it was like storytelling. Because as we'll hear in a few minutes that Narottama Das Thakur was expert in writing poetry in the vernacular. What does vernacular mean? It means the local language, which is simple Bengali. So he was able to bring Krishna consciousness to the masses in simple Bengali. So this is a very important part of Lord Chaitanya's mission. So they had this deity installation. All right, so let me just get to the point. Narottama Das Thakur led a big kirtan, and during this kirtan, guess what happened? Wow. Interesting thing. All the associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda, they appeared and they danced during the kirtan. Wow. That's amazing. And then when the kirtan was over, they disappeared again. Mm. This is very interesting. It's similar to the story when Brajanath, the great grandson of Krishna, went to Braj to basically excavate and discover the places of Krishna's pastimes. And he had a kirtan, and all of Krishna's associates had Krishna appeared, and they danced during the kirtan too. So this is similar type of pastime. So Narottama Das Thakur had this kirtan, and his kirtan was so powerful that Lord Chaitanya and his associates appeared and then disappeared at the end of the kirtan. And then after that, they had this beautiful holy festival where they were throwing red dyes at each other and, just having fun. I mean, India is known for festivals, really wild festivals where no one's supposed to get hurt. I mean, because sometimes there's so many people that people may get hurt. But they're not like festivals in the West that are violent. The only time people get hurt in India is because of an accident, because there's so many people crowded into one place, and sometimes there's a stampede. But in the West, you have these festivals where you have these violent people. People in India, at least traditionally before the invaders came, were not a violent people. They were more intelligent. Like I was mentioning before, when they had some philosophical difference or differences of opinion, they usually didn't kill each other. Usually they had an argument or discussion, as they may say, and the winner won. And nobody got hurt. It was like very chivalrous. They would argue during the day, and then at night they would eat. It was very, very chivalrous. Okay, so let's go on with this. So this was the festival of Kaituri, which was quite an interesting occasion in Narottama Das Thakur's pastimes. But many people were very, very upset that Narottama Das Thakur was taking disciples. And not only was he taking disciples, but many of his disciples were coming from the Brahmin caste. Now, remember this, there's very much caste conscious at that time, and still people are in India. So he was very spiritual, so he was beyond the caste distinction, obviously. It says that Kiva Vipra Kiva Nyashi Shujakena Nai Ye Krishna Tattva Veta Say Guru Hoy. One can accept a guru if he knows the science of Krishna, whether he is a learned person, not learned person, uh, even Shudra, lady, man, doesn't matter what type of body they have. It's like, would you discriminate against the guru because he arrived in the Volkswagen instead of a Mercedes or Tesla? I don't think you would discriminate against the guru because of that. It has nothing to do with being a guru. Absolutely nothing. The body has nothing to do. It's say Krishna Tattva Veta, say Guru Hoy. So anyway, so a lot of people were upset, and the Brahmanas complained to the king. The king's name was Nada Singha. That means half man, half lion. He was named after Lord Nrsimhadev. So obviously he had some pizzazz in him. So they complained to the king, and the king said, okay, let's take care of this guy. Not by killing him, but let's have some Brahmins go and defeat Narottam Das Thakur. And he sent his chief Brahmin, who was known as Rupa Narayana, big, big, big scholar, PhD from Harvard. Not Harvard, the Indian version of Harvard, whatever it was. Anyway, he was a big Sanskrit scholar. But Narottam Das Thakur's followers, who happened to be very, very scholarly Sanskrit scholars, had a plan to defeat him. And this plan was quite interesting. Two of the followers of Narottam Das Thakur, there was Ramchandra Kaviraj, who was actually a disciple of Srinivasacharya, and there was a disciple of Narottam Das Thakur named Ganga Narayan Chakravarti. They were quite elevated in Sanskrit grammar and everything like that. So what happened is they went to the village before Kaituri, and what did they do? They made believe that they were shopkeepers selling things like pan and other things like that, and just shopkeepers. So this Rupa Narayana, this great pandit sent by King Narasingha, he went to this, passed through this village, and when he was in the village, buy things. When you're traveling to India, you have to buy things in every village. Why? Because you're traveling slowly. You can't just zoom through villages, especially when you're walking. Things take time. Not that he got in his motorcycle and went from one village to another. So anyway, so in the village he went to the Panwala, and the Panwala was speaking perfect Sanskrit. And the other Wallas, they were all speaking perfect Sanskrit. And they were able to show themselves to be more intelligent than Rupa Narayan. And he thought, ooh, how do you know so much? And, who's your guru? And they all said, Narottam Das Thakur is our guru. And he thought, ooh, maybe I am making a mistake. And that night, he had a dream, and Durga appeared to him. Kalima, Kalima. And Durga said, I will kill you unless you surrender to Narottam Das Thakur. And so he surrendered, and not only that, the king and queen surrendered to Narottam Das Thakur, and they were both initiated by Narottam Das Thakur. That's one story of Narottam Das Thakur's great potency. So another story is this famous story of the dacoit named Chand Roy. Okay, he was big, big dacoit. He was ghostly haunted. And his father was just really worried about him. He was a dacoit, but he just became crazy after some time. And the father asked the devotees to pray, and especially Narottam Das Thakur to pray for him, and this Chand Roy became a devotee by the devotee's mercy. It's interesting, by the right association, a demon can become a devotee, and by bad association, a devotee can become a demon. Okay. So, when this Chand Roy became humble and a devotee, there was another king who was a Yavana. I'm going to describe what a Yavan is, but you can pretty much understand. He thought, now since this Chandroy is a devotee, we can just take care of him. He may be the prince or a king right himself, but we're going to take care of him. So the Yavana put him in prison, and basically Chandroy's father employed a mystic Shakta to get Chandroy out of prison. So the Shakta appeared in prison by his mystic powers, and he said, Chandroy, I'm getting you out of prison, just chant this Shakta mantra. And Chandroy had become such a great devotee by that time. He said, no, my guru is Narottam Thakur, and I only worship Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and Radha and Krishna. So get away from here, you Shakta. Thanks for trying to save me, but it ain't gonna work, because my only shelter, the only mantras I chant are the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and mantras, Vaishnava mantras. So he had so much faith. This dacoit had so much faith in Narottam Das Thakur. Finally, the Yavana king thought, I'm going to have this guy killed. So he put an elephant in front of Chandroy, and the elephant started to charge at Chandroy. And Chandroy just nonchalantly reached out, and he touched the elephant's trunk and pulled the elephant's trunk off, and of course the elephant died. And the king was a little humbled at that time, and he released Chandroy. That's an amazing story. I think that's amazing. Of course, Narottam Das Thakur is... all right, let's talk about how he disappeared first. He disappeared in a very interesting way. First of all, Ramchandra Kaviraj, who was a disciple of Srinivasacharya, was an inseparable friend. Godam. That's the way they see it in where I've been is Godam. Not Godam. Godam. Anyway, whatever it is. So go down. The way actually in Vrindavan they call it go down. That's how I got that pronunciation. Someone just put a message in. Go down. So I guess in Vrindavan they pronounce it a little differently, because otherwise it sounds like goddamn. Oh, anyway, can't say that. So anyway, so let's get back to the point. So Ramachandra Kaviraj was a great, inseparable friend with Narottam Das Thakur. They could not even bear to be apart even for a minute, basically. Ramachandra Kaviraj never even went to see his family. One time Narottam Das Thakur ordered Ramachandra Kaviraj, go back to your family for a little while. And Ramachandra Kaviraj could only walk like 10 meters away, and he felt so guilty that he wasn't following Narottam Das Thakur's instruction. He started hitting himself with a stick, and Narottam Das Thakur came out and said, please don't hit yourself with a stick, it's like hitting me. They were actually completely inseparable. Okay, so when Ramchandra Kaviraj and Srinivasacharya, who was his guru, went to Vrindavan, that's where they disappeared from. And when Narottam Das Thakur heard that news, he thought, it's time for me to go, because he was feeling the separation of his great friend and associate. One friend was Ramchandra Kaviraj, and he was also associate at Srinivasacharya. So he couldn't bear. So he told the devotees, make a funeral pyre, and I'm going to sit on the funeral pyre and leave this world in this way. So he sat for 3 days. But the Brahmins who had previously criticized Narottam Das Thakur pleaded with Narottam Das, they criticized Narottam Das Thakur for leaving this world in such an inauspicious way. Of course, for Vaishnava, any way he leaves this world is auspicious. He's always thinking of Krishna. There's nothing inauspicious, whether he leaves because of disease, whether he leaves because of a car accident, whether he leaves because of old age, whether he leaves because of whatever, even someone killing him. It's all auspicious because he's remembering Krishna. how can you say there's one auspicious way of dying or another inauspicious way? That's Vaishnava Puran. Because Vaishnava is always auspicious, whatever way he decides to come, whatever way he decides to leave. It's always auspicious. So, anyway, so what happened is that the Brahmins were criticizing Narottama Das Thakur for leaving this world in this particular way. And Narottama Das Thakur's disciple, Ganga Narayan Chakravarti, was pleading with his guru, please do not leave in this way, because it's causing people to criticize you. And Narottama Das Thakur then stood up from this funeral pyre and manifested a gold Brahmin thread on his body. So that really dissuaded the rascals from criticizing him. And he kept chanting the names of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Finally, a few days later, he entered into the Ganges, and he asked his disciples to please give me a bath, with the Ganges, pour water from your hands. And everyone was chanting, and he was chanting, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha 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 Krishna Chaitanya. And, as they were chanting that mantra, his body melted into the Ganges River. Wow. And it made like a milky substance. It's called a dugdha samadhi, dugdha, like milk. And devotees saved some of that milky substance, and they made a samadhi from it. It's called the dugdha samadhi of Narottama Das Thakur. So while he was present on this earth, he was an exponent of many different types of kirtan, especially Leela kirtan, but he's famous for different kirtan collections such as Prarthana, Prema Bhakti Chandrika, and every morning we are chanting so many of his songs, like Shiguru Charana Padma. That's actually written by Narottama Das Thakur. He's one of the most prolific songwriters. He and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur are most prolific songwriters. And the main contribution, I would say, was his bringing the understanding of Krishna consciousness to the common people through his writings and poetry, and, as I mentioned before, the vernacular. That means the common language, Bengali language, common Bengali language. Because generally at that time the scholars, as we heard before, they were mainly conversing and writing in Sanskrit, like Rupa Goswami wrote in Sanskrit. Of course, Rupa Goswami spoke Bengali, he spoke Persian, so many different languages, Oriyan. But primarily the language of the scholars like Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, was in Sanskrit, in the Sanskrit language. So this Krishna consciousness needed to be accessible to the people in general. Similarly, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada made Krishna consciousness accessible in the English language and in the modern languages in the Western world and now the Oriental world, like China. And Prabhupada said, however you express in whatever language you express Krishna consciousness, it's spiritually potent. It's not that everybody has to learn Sanskrit. Prabhupada did not say that. I mean, it's wonderful that devotees can learn Sanskrit and understand the different meanings of different verses and scriptures. But Prabhupada said if something is communicated in English, it has the same potency. That was Prabhupada's statement. Prabhupada said, not that everybody has to learn Sanskrit. So that gives us great hope, because I don't think in this lifetime I'm going to learn Sanskrit. Anyway, so with that happiness in mind about Narottama Das Thakur, let us unmute you all and allow you to ask questions about Narottama Das Thakur or any Krishna conscious subject matter you would like to ask questions about. Okay, I think, let me just minimize, whoops, I have to pull up all these different windows, and I don't want them to be too big, because if they're too big, they get in the way of seeing all of you. Okay, I have basically all the windows pulled up now. So, anybody have any questions or comments about Narottama Das Thakur or Vaishnavism or Great Vaishnavas or any of the subject matters we've been talking about the last few days? No? You can raise your hand.
Hare Krishna.
Rishikesh,
Yes,
okay.
Hare
Rishikesh
Krishna
to the
Gurudev.
rescue. Yeah,
My
what's your
obeisance
question?
Gurudev. My question is,
Yeah,
after Narottam Das Thakur disappeared from this world, still the Krishna consciousness movement was like, spread into so many diversions right now. So many Alpa Sampradayas sprouted even after
yeah,
he left. Uh, this.
yes.
This Alpa Sampradaya. So why is it like that, Gurudev? I mean, even though he was a contemporary of Krishna consciousness, after he left, there was so much diversions in Krishna consciousness until Bhaktivinoda Thakur
Why
arrived.
is that? Why is that? Because basically, look what happened after Krishna. What? Imam Vivasvate Yagam Praktavanaham Avyam Vivaswan Manave Praha Manorik Shvakave Bravet. As Krishna describes that he touched Vivaswan Manu Mukshvaku, and then the chain of disciplic succession was lost. That happens. That's the nature of things. Things get lost. Just like the scientific principle of entropy, how things go to less complex. So, by the nature of the time factor, uh, things get lost. I mean, it's very unfortunate because of people. Don't have pure
But this was
motives.
like very like only after 100 years.
That's right. Things got lost, and therefore you had to have someone like Bhaktivinoda Thakur appear to reestablish the authenticity of Krishna consciousness. Of course, there were great Vaishnavas. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there were other ones like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and others, Baladev Vijayabhushan, that appeared after Narottama Das Thakur. I mean, many great Vaishnavas went to speak Gaurkashodas Babaji Maharaj, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. But as far as the general understanding of Vaishnavism, it wasn't so much propagated. I mean, it was. I mean, when you say Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, certainly. But because people are generally materialistic in this world, they will utilize even the pure spiritual philosophy for something mundane. Now, fortunately, we I'm not saying we are pure or anything like that, but fortunately, we have Srila Prabhupada's books. Uh, Krishna has arranged books, talks, recordings, etc., like that. So Krishna has arranged in such a way that we have much more information, very specific information, and about how to conduct ourselves, how to conduct a society, than would have been possible for anyone to have had in the past because of the modern technology. So Krishna has arranged this modern technology so that we might be able to avoid what happened after other great acharyas disappeared. We might, so we have this fortune. The printing press. The printing press happened. Well, there was the printing press when Narottama Das Thakur was present, but it wasn't so widely used. And I think Gutenberg had already been there, not been in India. Wasn't so widely used, but we have this modern media right now by which we can solidify Prabhupada's understanding of Krishna consciousness, and this gives us a tool that they didn't have.
Right.
They didn't have previously. So yes, without that, things would have fallen apart. I mean, if we didn't have this technology, all this stuff, that Prabhupada gave us, and quotes from Prabhupada and everything like that, I don't think we would have been able to keep the movement together in any coherent way. But because the devotees are focused on Prabhupada's instructions, the GBC, I'm not saying the GBC is perfect, But because devotees were focused on this, and they have every devotee in the movement has access to Prabhupada's instructions. That's amazing. And
Right.
all of us are literate. Maybe not in Sanskrit, but everybody is literate in their own language. And Prabhupada's books and everything are translated into different languages. So I think we have much more checks and balances. And of course, there will always be deviant Vaishnava groups. Even today, there's deviant Vaishnava groups. There's Sahajas, there's Shaktas, whatever. But I think we're much more protected now. So here's a
Thank you, brother.
question. Thank you. Sometimes senior devotees act in a very mean way. They talk like this, and how to prevent ourselves from committing such Vaishnava aparadhas so that I can participate in the programs with everyone. Uh, whoops. Oh, sometimes I skipped. They talk about someone behind their back. They are partial for some junior devotees. They discriminate on the basis of gender. For this reason, I prefer not to go to the center. Because of this, their behavior, I see their shortcomings, but this is also Vaishnava from my side towards those devotees. Don't think evilly about those devotees. Just be compassionate towards them, and it may be necessary for you just to associate with those of like mind. You have to discriminate. But those who have a different mind or a different, what you see as improper discrimination, don't go there. Because one of the main things we should understand is Lord Chaitanya's devotees are adverse to criticizing others. So that's the only advice I can give you. Choose your own association. I certainly try to choose my association. That's very important. Okay, and it's time to go. So thank you very much. I have to go now because it's a little late here. We'll see everybody tomorrow evening. I think tomorrow we'll continue with the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Today was the appearance day of Narottama Das Thakur. So thank you all for joining us, and we will see everybody tomorrow. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Oops.